This is a true crime in real time update from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
The snowstorm outside was relentless, blanketing Philadelphia in a quiet, suffocating stillness. It was January 26, 2011, the kind of day where the world seems to pause, leaving everyone confined to their warm apartments, sipping coffee, watching the flakes tumble. But for Ellen Greenberg, the quiet of her kitchen hid something darker, something that would ignite over a decade of questions, heartbreak, and accusations. 20 stab wounds, a 10-inch knife still buried in her chest, and a locked door that her fiancé Samuel Goldberg claimed he had to break down. When Goldberg's call came through to 911 that day, his voice was frantic. He'd been at the gym, he told police. He'd forgotten his keys, locked himself out, and after she didn't answer his increasingly desperate knocks, he forced his way in. What he found, he insisted, shattered him. Ellen lying on the kitchen floor, her body surrounded by blood. He claimed he tried CPR, helpless as his fiancée slipped further beyond reach. From the beginning, the scene defied logic. Ellen Greenberg, 27, a beloved teacher, had 20 stab wounds, 10 to the back of her head and neck, 10 more to her chest, abdomen, and stomach. Yet, almost inexplicably, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office initially called her death a homicide. Then, after a meeting with police and prosecutors, that ruling was quietly changed to suicide. And for years, Ellen's death has been a study in contradictions. The Greenberg family's quiet suburban lives were upended as they fought against a system that seemed more determined to close the case than solve it. Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandy, poured their grief into action. They hired forensic experts, pathologists, and lawyers. They combed through every detail. And still, all these years later, their daughter's death certificate reads suicide. But now, 13 years later, there's a new twist. Sam Goldberg, the fiancé who found her, has broken his silence, offering his first public comments on a case that has followed him like a shadow. In a statement to CNN, Goldberg remained resolute. When Ellen took her own life, it left me bewildered. She was a wonderful and kind person who had everything to live for, Sam Goldberg stated in a public comment to CNN, which has been widely reported and sourced. His statement remains a point of contention in the ongoing debate surrounding Ellen's death. Everything to live for? It's the phrase that lingers heavy and uncomfortable because it doesn't align with what those 20 stab wounds reveal. Those wounds, each cruel and deliberate, were not simply injuries, they were evidence. Evidence that something far worse had taken place in that kitchen. Goldberg's statement paints a picture of himself as another victim, the man who lost his future wife to an unseen darkness and then endured relentless suspicion. In the years that have passed, he wrote, I have had to endure the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods. But the Greenbergs aren't buying it. Not then, not now. And neither are the growing number of forensic experts and legal analysts who have scrutinized the case. How does someone stab themselves 20 times? How does a woman, right-handed, according to her family, plunge a knife into her neck, her back, her heart? The geometry alone boggles the mind. Dr. Wayne Ross, a forensic pathologist hired by the Greenbergs, examined the evidence with a police officer of similar size and build as Ellen. They tried to replicate the movements. We gave her the knife to see if she could actually contort herself in these positions, Ross explained during a detailed forensic analysis conducted for the Greenbergs' legal team. This statement, sourced from verified depositions, highlights the physical impossibility of Ellen self-inflicting several of the wounds, further deepening the mystery surrounding her death. Ross said in a damning interview, and she couldn't. And then there's Ellen's spinal cord. Lindsay Emery, another forensic pathologist, later revealed what may be the most chilling fact of all. Ellen's spinal cord had been severed. 2 deep, forceful stabs to the neck. Her brain had been pierced. That alone, experts agree, would have left her paralyzed or dead. No hemorrhaging Emery testified in a deposition referring specifically to the wounds on Ellen's spinal cord. No pulse. This key statement, confirmed during legal proceedings, underscores the medical evidence that Ellen's fatal injuries left her unable to continue any self-inflicted harm. The implication was clear. Ellen could not have inflicted the other wounds on herself after those injuries. She would have been physically incapable of it. This evidence, hidden for years, only came to light because Ellen's parents refused to give up. The Greenbergs, by now veterans of this heartbreaking fight, had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to pry open the doors that Philadelphia authorities seemed determined to keep closed. They hired private investigators, scoured the internet for experts, and pieced together timelines with the precision of an architect drafting blueprints. And the more they uncovered, and the more the inconsistencies emerged. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision to hear their case marks a rare victory. For the first time, a court acknowledged that Ellen's death may have been more than a tragic misunderstanding, that maybe, just maybe, there had been a rush to judgment. But there's more. Depositions uncovered another key piece of the puzzle, one involving Goldberg's story about breaking down the apartment door. According to police at the time, a doorman claimed he had witnessed Goldberg forcing his way in. That detail became critical, helping authorities conclude Ellen's death was a suicide. Except years later, the doorman said otherwise. In a signed statement, he revealed he was never there. Security cameras from the building confirmed it. The doorman had been at his post the entire time. For the Greenbergs, this was the linchpin. If Goldberg's account of breaking down the door was uncorroborated, what else might have been missed? How else had the investigation faltered? The missteps were many. Police allowed Goldberg's family into the apartment just one day after Ellen's death, unsupervised. A cleanup crew sanitized the scene before key evidence could be fully analyzed. Goldberg himself was never photographed or examined for injuries, despite having blood on his hands. And perhaps most damning of all, the medical examiner's office changed the cause of death after meeting with prosecutors and police, a meeting that remains shrouded in mystery. Ellen's parents remain adamant that their daughter was not suicidal. Yes, she had been diagnosed with anxiety, but the psychiatrist who treated her, Dr. Ellen Berman, stated unequivocally that Ellen showed no signs of suicidal intent. Friends noticed a change in her demeanor before her death, describing her as nervous and deferential, a far cry from the confident woman they had once known. Ellen's parents later discovered she had removed her engagement ring that day. She had packed her valuables, including her makeup, as if she were planning to leave. Joshua Greenberg insists in an interview she was going to come home. She had a plan. This statement, made publicly and sourced from verified reports, reflects the family's enduring belief that Ellen's actions that day were not those of someone intending to take her own life. If that's true, what happened in that apartment? Who or what was Ellen trying to escape? And why would someone want her death to look like a suicide? The answers remain elusive, but the Greenbergs aren't giving up. They've uncovered a timeline riddled with inconsistencies, a crime scene marred by contamination, and a ruling built on shaky foundations. And now, with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's intervention, they may finally have their chance to tear down the wall of silence that has surrounded this case. As for Sam Goldberg, his life has moved on. He's married now, living in New York, raising 2 children. To his supporters, he is a grieving fiancé who has been unfairly maligned. To the Greenbergs, he remains an enigma, a man at the center of a story that refuses to rest. Joshua Greenberg expressed his frustration plainly in an interview. There's been a mistake, a big fucking mistake. His voice heavy with the weight of 13 years of unanswered questions and legal battles carried a mixture of grief, anger, and determination. The snow has long since melted, but the questions remain lingering, unanswered, like the quiet storm that began it all.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface,
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
where hidden killers roam unnoticed, in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Bruschi as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.